The attack at Berlin's Pride celebrations has exposed flaws in Germany's approach to combating extremism. The alleged killer was a 21-year-old German man with a past that had already raised many red flags. Back in May, he was found guilty of preparing a serious act of violence endangering the state, but was out on preliminary probation. He had attended court-ordered meetings with experts in deradicalization due to his history of Islamist extremism. But the head of the organisation that met the alleged killer, identified as Abdul B, told DW he was unfit for counselling.
This person was absolutely not apt for a deradicalization training because he didn't show any interest in opening up.
That's Cornelia Lotthammer, director of Germany's Violence Prevention Network. Her organisation works with school children, prison inmates, convicted extremists, and people considered vulnerable to radicalisation. So how does somebody become drawn to violent extremism? Is the Abdul B case an isolated incident, or does it go far deeper? And what's being done to stop radicalisation before it turns violent? The experts trying to prevent this say they're seeing a worrying trend.
We have also seen that in the past years, the people we work with are getting younger and younger. So this is a tendency that we can see, that offenders are becoming younger.
So Lotthammer says Germany isn't just dealing with extremism, it's dealing with extremism that's reaching young people.
The ground is always that there is some unhappiness and some lack in the actual daily life.
Now, we often talk about extremism as an ideology problem, but what if it starts much earlier than that? What makes someone vulnerable to a message promising belonging, purpose, and certainty in the first place? If extremists are recruiting a new generation in Germany, then who exactly are they recruiting? According to Lotthammer, there's no single profile of a person who becomes radicalized. No simple checklist, but there are patterns.
We have observed, for instance, unstable families, or violence in the family, or drug abuse in the family. We have seen youth that had bad experiences, like the parents had a divorce, or they have lost a parent, for instance. These reasons alone do not necessarily lead to a radicalization, but there are points that you can see that radicalization can be fostered by those instabilities. But every case is different.
Now, to be clear, most people who experience hardship never become extremists. That's not what Lotthammer is saying. Most people who experience family problems, trauma, or instability never become radicalized. What she is saying is that extremist groups are very good at spotting vulnerabilities and exploiting them. They offer answers to people who feel lost, certainty to people who feel confused, and belonging to people who feel like they don't belong anywhere.
Between 13 and 18, everybody is vulnerable in a certain way. People are finding their identity.
Now, teenage years are difficult for many. You're trying to figure yourself out. But what's the difference today? Well, young people have almost limitless access to an online world in ways previous generations simply didn't. And there's another trend that stands out. While women are also represented in deradicalization programs in Germany, the majority of those involved in violent extremism are young men. Lotthammer says that isn't a coincidence.
In the cases we deal with, this is also a question of masculinity, that we have a toxic masculinity, and we have role models that are propagated in these ideologies, like Islamism and also right-wing extremism, where men have a special role. And I think this might be attractive to many men, that they can gain or regain a role that our democratic and open and pluralistic societies do not offer them. and we can see many similarities between those two ideologies. Like we call it hyper-masculinity.
We often think of different radical movements in isolation, whether it's Islamist extremism or far-right extremism. But Lotthammer says they have similarities. They offer a vision of the world in which men have status and power, as well as a traditional leading role in society. Now, for some young men who feel alienated, ignored, or uncertain about the future, this can be an attractive option. And that's where social media enters the story.
I mean, our very early project started in 2001 with right-wing extremists on the countryside around Berlin. And they had no means but to meet at the bus stop in their little village. And they had some youth institution, maybe if they were lucky, where they could meet and exchange. And this has totally changed now, of course, because we have a vivid exchange online. And people get radicalized very easily and quicker than before. Although we would not really say that there's this lone wolf phenomenon, because you are never a lone wolf, because you're interconnected with a lot of people also online. And we have to realize that there is no difference between online and offline, because for young people, online is their offline.
All right, so in the past, radicalization often happened face-to-face in the real world. But today, it can happen on a phone. Recruiters can find people online, often through social media. So if recruitment mainly happens online, can intervention happen there too?
We're trying to do an approach that is quite new. If you're online and you are searching certain terms or you're exchanging certain information, that you will get a hint from the platform that says, oh, I can see that you are disseminating IS propaganda, for instance, and we would like to propose you to talk to an experienced consultant, because in the end, you have to talk to the people.
Lotthammer says the goal is simple. Reach people before they cross the line into violence. And they need to focus also on what extremist groups are offering that makes them so attractive in the first place. Lotthammer says they often don't begin by selling an ideology, but instead something else.
In the foreground, they seem to offer you friendship and love and harmony and everything. But then they, of course, abuse you with the political part. So they abuse these people. But first, they have offered them a family and a nice entourage where at the beginning people feel comfortable with and happy even.
They usually don't start with violence. They offer community, friendship, purpose, a sense of belonging. For a young person who already feels isolated, misunderstood, or disconnected, that's a pretty powerful offer. It's for these reasons that experts in Lotthammer's field say discussions around radicalization can't simply focus on security. They also have to focus on the social conditions that make people vulnerable in the first place. All right, so back to the deadly attack at Berlin's Pride celebrations, also known as the Christopher Street Day Parade, or CSD. On July 25th, Abdul B allegedly rammed a van into a crowd in the city's Tiergarten Park before attacking people with a blade, leaving one woman dead and 29 others injured. A day later, he was tracked down by police and shot dead. 21-year-old Abdul B was long known to the authorities. Prosecutors said he had attempted to travel to Syria in 2025 to join the terrorist group known as the Islamic State, but was arrested in Lebanon and spent 3 months in prison for incitement to religious conflict. He returned to Germany late last year, where he was rearrested. In May this year, a Berlin juvenile court sentenced Abdul B to almost 2 years in prison for preparing a serious act of violence endangering the state, but he was released for 6 months pending a final decision on his imprisonment. In a statement, the Berlin Public Prosecutor's Office said the court considered that Abdul B had already spent 9 months in custody in Germany and Lebanon, that he had, quote, distanced himself from ISIS, and there had been no concrete threat. The horrific attack is triggering debates about policing, surveillance, and sentencing. And those conversations matter. But if radicalization often begins long before a crime is committed, can it be stopped before it turns violent? For organisations like Violence Prevention Network, that's the challenge. And while deradicalization sounds straightforward, the reality is often far more complicated. Because identifying someone at risk is one thing, convincing them to engage is another. In fact, the alleged Berlin attacker had already been referred to Lotthammer's organisation by the same court that had released him, pending a decision about his sentence. But she says her colleagues had concerns from the outset.
After the 2 first meetings, they already had the impression that this person was absolutely not apt for a deradicalization training, because he didn't show any interest in opening up for the process. But since they were very experienced and they do this for a very long time, my colleagues, they could see that he wasn't really interested. He didn't want to do this training, and therefore he wasn't apt. The court would have to accept this, or they could have forced us to do the training, or they could find another organization, or they could take him back into custody, and maybe one would have started the process even in prison. He didn't show any aggression or anything, because if my colleagues would have noted any kind of plan that he was planning an attack, or that he would act in a dangerous way or anything, they would have contacted the police immediately. We work very closely with the police. So that's not the point. But if a person is just friendly and doesn't show their real face, then you can't really do a lot.
Lotthammer says Abdul B's case is thankfully an extreme exception. Her organisation has worked with almost 500 people referred by courts or their families for deradicalization, and almost all of them have been able to renounce violence, find education or employment, and restart their lives. But this case highlights the limits of deradicalization programs. People can be offered support, they can be encouraged to engage, but some can't be persuaded to do so. And that's why prevention matters, because the deeper somebody moves into an extremist view, the harder it is to reach them. So this story isn't only about one attacker, it's about a broader challenge facing Germany. The question now is how the country will respond after the attack. Can it prevent vulnerable young people from being lured into extremist movements in the first place? I'm Pablo Foley-Elias, for me and the whole team here in Berlin. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.